알리기 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
Global heritage will unite. We share brilliant values and honor the world's most cherished legacies to pass our heritage on to future generations. Busan invites you. The 48th session of UNESCO World Heritage Committee, July 2026, Busan, Korea.
In our headlines on this Wednesday, February 4th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung hosts business leaders at Cheongwon earlier today to touch upon youth employment and rural investment. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun sits down with his U.S. counterpart Marco Rubio and seeks a reversal of the recently raised U.S. tariffs on South Korea. And Trade Minister Yohan Gu says the U.S. is engaged in interagency talks over formalizing Trump's 25% tariff hike on South Korean products. President Lee Jae-myung sat down with South Korean business leaders earlier on this Wednesday to address youth employment and rural investment. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
President Lee Jae-myung is stepping up its outreach to business leaders as he seeks to build a healthier economic ecosystem.
경제는 생태계라고 하는데 너무 당연한 얘기이기도 하지만 풀밭도 있고 메뚜기도 있고 토끼도 있고 그래야 호랑이도 건강하게 살아갈 수 있는 것인데 자칫 잘못하면 풀밭이 다 망가질 경우도 있겠다.
President Lee invited leaders of South Korea's major conglomerates, including Samsung Electronics, SK, Hyundai Motor Group, and LG, to the Blue House on Wednesday. Acknowledging that their efforts have helped put the domestic economy back on track, the president said the next task is to ensure that the benefits of growth are shared more evenly.
어쨌든 이 성장의 과실, 성장의 기회들이 중소기업에게도 또 수도권 중심인 대한민국에서는 좀 지방에도 또 이미 일정한 위치를 차지한 기성세대뿐만이 아니라 새롭게 우리 사회에 진입하는 청년 세대들에게도 좀 골고루 옮겨가.
For that, Yi urged business leaders to expand job openings for young people, pledging that the government will increase financial support for employment and training programs run by businesses. He also laid out plans to expand budget and infrastructure investment beyond the capital, calling on businesses to shift away from capital-focused growth. In response, South Korea's top 10 companies by total assets announced plans to invest 270 trillion won, roughly $186 billion in outer capital regions over a 5-year period.
Through bold investment, we aim to revitalize local economies, create jobs for young people in underserved regions, and expand both hiring and training programs.
Wednesday's meeting was President Yi's latest efforts to rally the business community behind two of his top policy priorities, reducing regional disparity and creating more jobs for future generations. He delivered the same message to foreign invested companies last week. 송희진, Arirang News.
And speaking about companies, Samsung Electronics has become the first South Korean company to surpass market capitalization of 1 quadrillion won, or roughly $689 billion. Shares finished Wednesday's session at 169,100 won, or about $116, garnering a final market value of 1,001 trillion won. During trade, these shares touched an all-time high of 169,400 won. Pundits are linking the outstanding performance to AI-related chip demand. In the broader market, the benchmark Kospi index rose over 1.5% to close at yet another fresh high of 5,371.1. South Korea's foreign exchange reserves fell for the second month in a row in January. According to the Bank of Korea on this Wednesday, the reserves reached $425.91 billion as of the end of last month, down over $2.1 billion from December. Bank officials are linking this latest retreat to market stabilization measures, including foreign exchange swaps with the National Pension Service. Last December, the reserves dropped for the first time in 7 months. Meanwhile, as of late last year, South Korea ranked 9th globally for foreign exchange reserves. Top diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. held their first meeting for this year in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday local time, and topping those talks were tariffs. Our Park Jun-han has details.
South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio at a closed-door meeting in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday. This comes as the Korean government seeks to resolve issues after U.S. President Donald Trump warned that tariffs on Korea would be hiked from 15% to 25%, citing delays in the National Assembly's passage of legislation needed to implement last November's bilateral trade and investment deal. After the meeting, South Korea's foreign ministry said that Minister Cho Hyun urged Secretary Rubio that there will be swift and substantive implementation of the November joint fact sheet, especially in nuclear energy, nuclear power submarines, and shipbuilding. He also explained Seoul's efforts on tariff agreements and U.S.-bound investments and proposed continued diplomatic support for smooth trade talks. Both ministers agreed to implement security commitments to build positive momentum and maintain close coordination on North Korea issues and regional stability. The U.S. State Department also released a statement emphasizing the enduring strength of the two countries' alliance and said both sides discussed advancing bilateral cooperation through a forward-looking agenda aligned with recent summits between Presidents Trump and Yi. Secretary Rubio also thanked Korea for its leadership in developing secure, resilient, and diversified critical minerals supply chains. The deployment of high-level trade figures to the U.S. reflects the deep concerns in Korea over tariffs, which could disrupt operations at Korean companies. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Trade Minister Yohan Gu believes the Trump administration is engaged in interagency discussion over formalizing the higher U.S. tariff on South Korea. Our Kim Jun-ong covers his remarks.
South Korea's Trade Minister Yohan Gu has said that he believes the Trump administration is weighing whether to officially publish planned tariff hikes on South Korea on the U.S. Federal Register. Yo made the remarks while speaking to reporters at Washington's Union Station on Wednesday on his way back to Seoul. He said the U.S. administration is still consulting internally, and while such a step is required to put the move into effect, Seoul believes the timing of a tariff hike has yet to be finalized.
Publication on the Federal Register is, in a way, a routine administrative procedure. And for now, it appears that the issue is still going through an internal consultation process within the U.S. government.
During the trip, Yo met with officials from the Office of the United States Trade Representative, along with other administration officials and industry representatives, to seek solutions to heightened trade issues between the two countries and reaffirm Seoul's commitment to existing trade and investment agreements. He also held closed-door meetings with around 20 U.S. lawmakers, where he outlined legislative steps to support U.S. investment and stressed that bilateral commitments, including in non-tariff areas, are being upheld. Meanwhile, Yo did not meet with his counterpart, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, saying the U.S. side may not yet fully grasp some aspects of South Korea's system and that continued outreach will be needed. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
Expectations for North Korea to engage in its 9th ruling party Congress this month are sparking much speculation over the policies that may emerge. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
North Korea's 9th Workers' Party Congress is expected to underscore nuclear and leadership confidence amid speculation over future US talks and an ongoing local development drive. First, the leadership is expected to emphasize progress in weapons development, reinforcing the strategic course set in 2021.
At the 9th Party Congress, North Korea is expected to assess that it has made significant progress in strategic weapons development over the past 5 years. Understanding the crucial use of drones in the Ukraine war, the North will likely keep pursuing strategic and conventional weapons in parallel. It may present as key goals for the next 5 years the successful test launch of the Hwasong-20 ICBM unveiled at last October's Workers' Party Anniversary Parade, and the development of a strategic nuclear-powered submarine revealed last year.
But at the same time, the Congress will have to address major projects with questionable progress.
On the surface, North Korean regime announced that it has developed nuclear-powered submarines, like the Kim Gun-ok submarine and the new one, 8,700 kilotons, Virginia-class nuclear submarines. But experts would cast a serious doubt whether these allegedly nuclear-powered submarines are actually operable.
There are also questions over whether the regime will continue to declare South Korea a hostile state. This follows Seoul's current government on Tuesday releasing its first inter-Korean policy for peaceful coexistence. Analysts believe Pyongyang sees little immediate incentive for rapprochement with the South or the US and will likely continue prioritizing ties with Russia and China. Still, leaving room to maneuver, the North's growing alignment with Russia may even have a broader strategic purpose as leverage in future talks with Washington.
Emphasizing the bilateral partnership between Russia and North Korea can be used by the regime to justify any bold initiatives that will be taken in preparation for a big deal with the United States. That Russia is backing North Korea, so North Korea has great deal of strategic autonomy. It does not have to be afraid of the United States.
Beyond external policy, the Party Congress is also expected to reinforce the regime's domestic agenda.
North Korea is likely to cite regional factory construction and large greenhouse projects including Incheon Uju, as key economic achievements, while setting higher targets for regional development, particularly in public health, which remains underdeveloped.
Observers will further look for signals on leadership dynamics as frequent public appearances by Kim Jong-un's daughter Kim Joo-ae draw attention. Held every 5 years, the North Party congresses set out policy direction, reshuffle elites, and set the regime's political line. Experts say the conference is likely to take place by mid-February. Seoul Arirang News.
In other news, a U.S. Navy fighter jet brought down an Iranian drone on Tuesday that was, quote, aggressively approaching a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. Our Ising-jae has the latest.
The U.S. military says it has shot down an Iranian drone that approached one of its aircraft carriers in the Arabian Sea, in the latest sign of rising tensions between Washington and Tehran. According to U.S. Central Command, the incident happened on Tuesday when an Iranian Shahed 139 drone flew toward the USS Abraham Lincoln with what officials described as unclear but aggressive intent. The drone was ultimately downed by an F-35C fighter jet operating from the carrier. A spokesperson for U.S. Central Command said the action was taken in self-defense to protect the ship and its crew, stressing that the drone's approach posed a potential threat. The encounter comes at a sensitive diplomatic moment. Iran and the U.S. are preparing to resume nuclear talks in Istanbul on Friday, as both sides attempt to revive negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled a tough stance ahead of those talks. He warned that with American warships moving closer to Iran, bad things would probably happen if no agreement is reached. The deployment of the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group has expanded Washington's military presence in the region and increased the president's range of options should tensions escalate. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed skepticism about Tehran's intentions. In talks with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff on Tuesday, Netanyahu said Iran has repeatedly shown that its promises cannot be trusted and suggested any future deal should be viewed cautiously. Observers say the upcoming talks in Istanbul could be critical in determining whether tensions ease or move closer to confrontation. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, main opposition People Power Party floor leader Chang Dong-hyuk has called for direct communication with President Lee Jae-myung. In his address to the National Assembly on this Wednesday, Chang underscored communication rather than confrontation and called for dialogue with the president on inflation, housing prices and U.S. trade pressure. He nonetheless condemned the ruling Democratic Party for undermining the judicial system, denouncing its special investigations as being politically motivated. He further insisted on the introduction of 3 separate special probes targeting allegations against the DP that include a property development case, bribery linked to candidate nominations, and political ties to the Unification Church. More than 11,000 individuals became naturalized South Koreans last year, the highest since the year 2020. According to the Justice Ministry on this Wednesday, 11,344 out of 18,623 applicants acquired Korean nationality between January and December last year. Naturalizations previously peaked at 13,885 in 2020, but fell to around 10,000 in 2021 and 2022, before rising again in 2023 and 2024. By country, those from China accounted for the largest number of recently naturalized South Koreans at 56.5%, the highest since the pandemic. They were followed by Vietnam, the Philippines and Thailand. Curtains are up for Seoul Fashion Week, and this time around, its venue, Dongdaemun Design Plaza, is offering a comprehensive one-stop service. Our Cho Young-eun was there.
Korean fashion drew large crowds and global attention as enthusiasts and industry insiders filled Dongdaemun Design Plaza to catch the latest trends. The 2026 Fall-Winter Seoul Fashion Week kicked off on Tuesday and runs through Sunday at DDP, featuring a total of 15 runway shows and 9 presentation events from 24 participating brands. The opening show was led by men's label Moon. Embodying the brand's philosophy of embracing the unfamiliar, the show featured military-inspired silhouettes and draping techniques that resemble paper wrapping. Unlike recent years, Seoul Fashion Week is hosting all major programs at a single venue to strengthen networking opportunities and streamline buyer-designer interactions. This season, Seoul Fashion Week enhances the viewing experience through its one-site format at DDP, serving as the global fashion business platform. The week began with the Seoul Fashion Forum under the theme The Next Chapter of K-Fashion, Deep Dive and Inspiring, welcoming around 300 fashion professionals and industry leaders. Notably, this year introduces public sessions, allowing fashion enthusiasts to join discussions and hear what the industry experts and leaders have to say.
I believe that when Korean brands broaden their perspective, move beyond imitation, and discover their own unique identity, they can succeed both globally and in Korea.
The trade show, Seoul Fashion Week's major business program, begins on Thursday, offering one-on-one consultations with 100 overseas buyers from 20 countries. Key global buyers, including Harvey Nichols, Urban Outfitters, and Club 21 Singapore, are set to attend, highlighting the growing international demand for K-fashion and Seoul Fashion Week's expanding global influence. 조영은, Arirang News.
Nostalgia for childhood games as well as cravings for simple snacks are creating opportunities for new forms of social engagement here in South Korea with no strings attached. Our Chung Hae-rim shows us how.
Here at Seorae Island in Seoul's Seochogu district, more than 30 people have gathered on a Friday night. To onlookers, it may seem like a large meet and greet, but these people have only one goal: to play cops and robbers, or gyeongdo. Without much in the way of small talk, the participants do a brief warm-up exercise and get started. The game, which is a childhood staple game for Koreans now in their 20s and 30s, consists of cops who chase the robbers, who are sent to jail when caught.
We feel like neighbors because we're all strangers, but we play games together, like kids. It's like Squid Game.
The participants also enjoy games like Red Light, Green Light, and Round and Round, all childhood games that were also featured in the Korean Netflix hit Squid Game. Unlike most social gatherings, they part without any interactions outside of simply playing the game.
The people here are not here to network or grab drinks. At this moment, they're simply cops and robbers, running towards a single goal, enjoying themselves.
Another one-goal meeting trending in Korea is one where people gather just to eat French fries. Here at a McDonald's in Mapogu district, 7 people have gathered solely for their love of the crispy snack. They split the bill anonymously using the Carrot app before placing their order, and a large pile of French fries soon arrives. Conversation flows easily, from personality types to hobbies, and before they know it, the food is gone. Laughing throughout, they part ways casually.
The meeting was just to eat fries, without having to talk about heavy topics or personal life, so it was enjoyable.
Both gatherings were organized through Carrot, an online platform that connects nearby users through secondhand classifieds and meetings. Because participants remain anonymous, many say there is little pressure to maintain relationships, resulting in these one-purpose meetups becoming more common. Experts say this reflects a shift in how younger generations view social connections.
In the past, relationships often came with a sense of obligation, which could make people feel uncomfortable. Today, people can choose relationships more freely and let go without pressure, which I think can actually lead to richer social connections.
From playground games to shared snacks, Koreans are finding new ways to connect without the pressure of lasting ties. Chung Hae-rim, Arirang News.
This is the world now. bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. President Donald Trump on Tuesday signed a massive $1.2 trillion government funding package into law, ending the 4-day partial government shutdown that began last Saturday. The U.S. House passed the bill 217 to 214 earlier on Tuesday after the Senate approved it last Friday. The package funds almost all of the federal government through the end of September, but puts the Department of Homeland Security on a 2-week stopgap that expires on February 13th. Lawmakers now face a short window to negotiate a longer DHS deal as Democrats push for changes after federal agents fatally shot 2 people in Minneapolis last month. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify later this month in a congressional investigation into late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer confirmed on Tuesday that the Clintons will sit for transcribed, filmed depositions on February 26th and 27th. The agreement effectively pauses a looming contempt of Congress vote that could have led to criminal charges against the couple. NASA has delayed its mission to fly astronauts around the moon after hydrogen leaks disrupted a fueling test. Engineers at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida detected the leaks during a wet dress rehearsal, a final pre-launch simulation of the massive Space Launch System rocket. This technical failure forced launch controllers to halt the countdown with just 5 minutes remaining. The delay pushes the launch date back to at least March 6th. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has announced plans to ban social media for children under the age of 16 to combat, quote, the digital Wild West. Speaking at the World Government Summit in Dubai on Tuesday, Sanchez also vowed to introduce legislation that would hold tech executives criminally liable for failing to remove harmful or illegal content and would criminalize manipulating algorithms to amplify illegal content. The proposal still needs parliamentary approval, with the legislation process set to begin next week. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
Today marks 입춘, which means the start of spring. Thanks to warmer southwesterly winds, the cold is taking a short break. It definitely feels milder, but I would not recommend packing away those thick winter coats just yet. Starting Friday, colder air will move back in and winter cold will remind us it's not over yet. But with the cold easing off, air quality isn't great today. Ultrafine dust levels are bad across the country. This dusty air is expected to stick around through tomorrow. Seoul will start off at 1 degree Celsius tomorrow, with Chuncheon at -4 degrees. Highs will rise up to 8 degrees in Seoul, 14 degrees in Daegu, Gyeongju, and Busan. Looking ahead, rain or snow is forecast in Gyeonggi-do province and northern parts of Gangwon-do province tomorrow. And the Jeollado provinces and Jeju Island could have rain or snow over the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
The new shopping game is starting.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you've signed a contract for a one room, obviously you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
A sweet victory for Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters offers K-pop its first ever Grammy Award, while Sugar here in South Korea looks ahead to a bitter taxation. With more on Press Perspective today.
Hello, you're watching Press Perspective for this Wednesday, February 4th here in Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. Today we talk about K-pop's moment of glory at this year's Grammy Awards and then move on to prospects of a bitter tax on all things sweet here on the national front. For this, I have writer Colin Marshall with us in the studio. Colin, welcome back.
Glad to be here, Sonny.
I also have our Mariana Baroli with Italian weekly news magazine Panorama live on the line. Mariana, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hi, Sunny. Thank you so much.
Right, Colin, let us start here in the studio. So let's begin with news of the song Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters winning a Grammy Award to offer K-pop its first ever Grammy victory. What are the broader implications of this nod of acknowledgement, if you will?
Yes, this is being taken as a victory for K-pop at the Grammys. In some sense, a long-awaited victory. For some, anyway. There are many observers, especially in Korea, or in the K-pop fan community worldwide, who have been saying for a long time, for years, complaining, when will K-pop get its acknowledgement? When will K-pop win a Grammy? When will K-pop artists start winning Grammys? Which is an implication, or it's a premise worth thinking about, because you do wonder. The Grammys are an American awards ceremony. Most of the artists who win have been American, as you would expect, or American adjacent, at least from the English-speaking world. So I do wonder where the idea came from that it was almost the inevitable destiny of K-pop artists, of Korean pop music artists, to win Grammys. It's a little like, if you think about Korean music awards, they're not lavishing awards on American bands. You don't see Maroon 5 getting Korean music awards, Korean industry awards, no matter how popular they may be here. So I do wonder about the premises there, but in any case, it doesn't surprise me to see Golden winning this award and it being taken as a Korean victory. Though, I mean, as we mentioned on this broadcast, K-pop Demon Hunters, the film, the most successful in Netflix history, I believe, is thoroughly an American production. Writer, director, there are Korean Americans aplenty in this production, but it's an American production, a Hollywood movie, we can say. And same with the music. For the most part, the performers, the writers, and the producers, with the exception of, I think, one producer, are either Americans or Korean Americans. And so you could say, well, in a sense, it stands to reason that this song would win a Grammy because it's an American song. There are Korean lyrics, and we'll talk about that later in the show, but it is, I suppose, maybe a hybrid of K-pop and American pop music, a bit like another song which was in the running, Apatu by Rosé, the K-pop star, who is from New Zealand, incidentally, and Bruno Mars, the American pop star. That did not win a Grammy, but it was also seen as one way that K-pop could make its mark, or at least sort of crack open the door in the Grammys. Now, another sort of conversation this opens up is to what extent K-pop is now a genre unto itself, as opposed to simply a label for Korean pop music. Because not all Korean pop music perhaps would be recognized as K-pop stylistically, but at the same time, maybe K-pop can be made by non-Koreans. Maybe a group that contains no ethnic Koreans could make recognizably K-pop. You know, it could happen. But as of now, I think we're seeing more so than the victory of K-pop per se, we're maybe seeing an emergence of a new kind of K-pop, or a change in the definition of K-pop.
Right. Mariana, Golden's Grammy was covered widely by the foreign media. What appears to be the common narrative, would you say?
I think the common narrative is pretty clear right now, and this is being framed like a point of no return, especially in Italy, because foreign media aren't just calling this a very historic first for K-pop, but they're reading Golden as proof that K-pop has actually fully crossed from global popularity into institutional legitimacy. So Grammys matters, especially, I think, abroad, because they're very conservative design. It's a show that it's very slow to move, and it's deeply industry-centric when it comes to music. So when they finally acknowledge K-pop, it's not about like chasing a trend, but about recognizing a shift that I think it's already happened everywhere in the world. But at the same time, I think there's a shared collective memory in the coverage of Grammys. You know, everyone remembers disappointment around BTS being passed over multiple times. And I think that also this year, it could have been Rosé here, but because let's be honest, APT was basically everywhere. But the context doesn't take away from the win of Golden. I think it actually gives more recognition and more weight to it because it highlights how K-pop changed, as Colin said, and how it's been shaping the global pop culture. So without formal recognition, and why this moment feels earned rather than accidental. So I think Golden isn't just, it's a breakthrough, that arrives in a hybrid models through animation and the recognizing of fandom culture and streaming logic and the global songwriting. So this is not K-pop, but like we usually know it, but it's like knocking on the door in a new or written form.
And with regard to this year's Grammy Awards then, Mariana, how would you care to assess the presence of K-pop this time around?
I think the presence felt less about volume because there weren't that many nominations actually, but the performance of Rose was great, and obviously the position mattered more than visibility. So the win of Golden sent a very clear message that K-pop doesn't need to dominate the stage to be relevant, and that it's actually shaping the global music and entertainment history. So I think what really stood up was that K-pop appeared like a very broader cultural and industrial ecosystem rather than a single genre competing for trophies. So, K-pop has basically everything: storytelling, visual world, animation, transmedia, fandoms, everything function, and it's highly sophisticated, and the community is always part of it. So I think it's a very mature phase of the global influence of K-pop, and I think it's only the beginning. So I think that this year Grammys marked a very high shift on the spectacle to structure, and K-pop wasn't there to seek validation anymore or proving that it belongs to the American or the foreign countries, but that it's a point of innovation that it's highly recognized from everyone.
Right. And moving forward, Colin, the New York Times, it claims that K-pop Demon Hunters has actually gotten a greater number of Americans to learn the Korean language. What do you say?
Well, I say that I suppose I'm glad because it makes me think back to my memories of first learning Korean myself, and that was in the mid-2000s. I started just self-studying for a while there because I had no other resources. I was living in Santa Barbara, California, a medium-sized city, got into Korean film, and from there just sort of found what I could to study with and applied to a Korean class that happened to appear at a local community college and was then canceled because of lack of enrollment. I think I might have been the only one who signed up, and that's impossible to imagine today when, from what I understand it, Korean classes are so packed in American, not just community colleges, but universities and cultural centers that you can't get into one. You have to wait. I mean, it's hard to get into because there are too many people now, not too few. So complete reversal from how it was 15, 20 years ago. At the same time, I can see some echoes as well of my experience. I moved to Los Angeles after a few years so I could live in Koreatown, where I practiced Korean more. And there's a Korean cultural center, of course, not far from Koreatown. And I signed up for classes there, very excited, and found that the beginners class was full, always full, in the biggest room in the center. And it was full to bursting, almost standing room only. Everybody there was there almost because of K-pop or K-dramas. Again, this is about 2010. And already that was the case. In Los Angeles, a very Korean-aware part of the US, maybe the most. But that was how the lowest tier, the beginner class was. But as you moved up the levels, the numbers dropped precipitously. And I started in the class, like level C or whatever it was, with maybe 10 people. So you go from 50, 60 people in one room down to 10, and then past that point, it narrows down even more. So this is something referred to in this New York Times article about Americans learning Korean because of K-pop Demon Hunters, that the attrition rate is very high. So as I often say, I started learning by learning Hangul, the Korean alphabet, which is well known to be easy. Even I knew that somehow before I even got an interest in Korean. I knew the alphabet was easy to learn. So I picked that up, and then it gives you the impression that the rest of the language might also be easy, when that could hardly be further from the truth. And I think many students still find that, or for other reasons, they come to Korea and they come up against some other difficulty, not necessarily related to the language. But I have seen many statistics that say every language in America, every foreign language, is losing students but Korean. So that's a victory right there, I suppose, culturally speaking. And if that translates to more Americans learning Korean before they come to live in Korea, I'll be happy about that. So far, I think the level of expat language skill is still very low. So maybe another K-pop Demon Hunters can sort of give that a nudge. We'll see.
Fingers crossed for that.
Indeed.
And Mariana, is there a greater interest in learning Korean there in Italy? And also, Mariana, what do you believe is the role of culture in language learning?
I think that culture has always been the most powerful gateway to languages because, you know, emotion beats obligation every time, you know? So you don't really need to learn a language because you have to, but you learn it because you want to understand it, even if it's a lyric, an interview, a joke, a live stream moment, a meme, whatever. So I actually started studying Korean myself, and the very first question was from my classmate was like, when we do start understanding the song just by listening to them. And I remember feeling exactly the same way, you know, as a teenager when I started learning English through, you know, Backstreet Boys, for example. That moment when the lyrics stopped being like, you know, just a noise, a different like kind of words or something that suddenly they make sense. That moment is very addictive, and it's when you start feeling that you're part of the culture in a deeper and more meaningful way. So the change in Italy, I think it's very real. Interesting, Korean isn't an episode anymore. It's something that it's very structural. So universities, private courses and apps, everything has adapted, you know, to a demand that I think it's here to stay, and it's shaping how we're living today. It's not uncommon, you know, to see people around the city eating, I don't know, a kimbap, or like asking for like, oh, let's go to a Korean restaurant, or like, oh, I know the skincare, like, what's your routine? So Korean is no longer seen as a difficult language, and it's also very, very deep inside the cultural skill and the cultural structure, even in our ecosystem. So I think it's amazing.
Right. Mariana, I like the phrase that you use. There's a rhyme, right? Emotion beats obligation with regard to language learning. Colin, let's now move on to another story. There is talk about a possible tax on sugar here in South Korea. Do give us some context.
Yes, this is part of a recommendation from the World Health Organization that governments tax more heavily, especially beverages with sugar. Sweetened beverages being one of the main I think, sources of the obesity problem in the United States, a country famous for the weight of its public. The U.S. having recently pulled out, by the way, of the WHO, so maybe that won't happen there, but will it happen here? Perhaps. And I think Lee Jae-myung, the president, when he was posting to social media about this, he did mention not just beverages, but sweetened foods in general might be subject or could people support it, that people, when polled in Korea, support a tax. I think 70% of the respondents support a tax or increased taxation on sweetened foods with sugar added, with sweeteners added. Okay, that makes me think of, well, it puts my mind back to Koreatown, where I mentioned living when I was studying Korean at first, because in Koreatown you had this phenomenon, as you get in many enclaves, where the immigrants who populate it, they preserve, if inadvertently, the culture of the place they came from the era they left it. And so that's most charming to Koreans, I suspect, who visit Koreatown in the food. The food in Koreatown is still, as people tell me, it's still the flavors of the 70s, 80s, 90s in Korea, unchanged, which means they have changed here. And even in the time I've been living in Korea, these past 10 years, you can tell it's getting sweeter. The foods keep getting sweeter, not just the snacks, not just the Dubai chondugi cookies, which are probably the sweetest thing you can get right now, but even just Korean food. regular food you would go out to eat. It seems to be getting sweeter and sweeter over the years, or has been over the decades, to the point where the flavor of the ingredients seems to be somewhat obscured by how sweet it's become. So if there is a policy that can help with that, I would certainly be grateful for it. I do worry a bit about sort of paternalistic overreach in taxing sugar, taxing sugary foods. You can always choose not to eat them, and maybe it is desirable to tax something sugary, to tax sugary beverages, and use that money, as the president mentioned, to fund public health programs. Okay, fair enough, but you are conceding a certain degree of power over your choices to the state, and you might like that in this case with this president. You might not like the next president, but they'll have that power. That's the thing. So it's all well and good to sort of gain the assistance of the state in achieving your health goals, but the power will stay with the state, and the state is a sledgehammer. Sometimes a sledgehammer is a tool you need, but it's very hard once you use a sledgehammer to unsledgehammer something. So I would be wary about using tools of that kind for problems of that scale.
All right, something to think about, of course. Mariana, but for the sake of some comparison, do tell us a bit about the implementation of a sugar tax in other countries, perhaps over in Italy as well.
Italy actually postponed that until 2027. So if we look globally, I think that still sugar taxes tend to follow the same basic logically. So, they're basically less about shaming the consumers and more like pushing the markets to, let's say, evolve. For example, I'd like to mention the UK. I think it's one of the best case example. It's a tariff system that encourages companies to reformulate the products before even consumer can feel the impact of that. And also Mexico, I think, showed that a sugar tax can work, even if in the face of a very strong industry resistance, and it does influence the consumption over time. But I think the most important case is like South Africa, where the focus on sugar content shows again nudges between brands and innovation rather than simply passing on the costs. So the common takeaways, I think, from international cases is that, like, when designed properly, the sugar taxes just don't reduce the sugar intake, but reshape the way that sugar products are being sold. And it's one of the biggest change happening right now. And it's happening, I think, mostly behind the scene, because most of the consumers doesn't even know that. And it's mostly based on product development and not just on, the checkout or what it feels like. So I think it's important to see how it evolves globally. And I'm very curious to see how Italy will assess to it, because we're waiting for the tax. It should have been started in 2020, but it was being postponed multiple times. So we'll see in a couple of years, next year, or maybe let's see what happens.
Right. Meanwhile, here in South Korea, prospects of a sugar tax, like you mentioned, Colin, were raised by President Lee Jae-myung on his social media platform. What are your thoughts on this manner of direct communication with members of the media by the head of a country?
Indeed, members of the media and everybody else who happens to be on these social media platforms, and he's become quite a prolific user of them, Lee Jae-myung. The volume of posts has gone way up, and I would maybe be a little nervous if I were on his communications team, although he hasn't shown the impulsiveness in his communication on social media of some world leaders I could name. But you do wonder how much these posts are being workshopped in advance and how much he's just sort of firing them off while being driven from appointment to appointment, maybe a little of both. But he has said, I believe, that it's a form of agenda setting, and that's a term I remember from my college political science major days, that presidents have power, of course, but they don't have as much power as often they're assumed to. One of the main powers they do have is setting the agenda. If they talk about something publicly, be it in a press conference, social media, wherever, it does become a subject in the discourse, in the public discourse. Here we are talking about it right now because he has been making his posts about it. Now, I do worry a little bit. I know that this is part of his brand. Lee Jae-myung's brand is a president who is bringing in real democracy, which has been a sort of theme with past presidents as well. But he's the one communicating with the people. The people aren't getting listened to. He's the one who's going to give them an ear, and he'll act on their requests. Well, fair enough. Although I do worry about how to put it, a political figure being a little too swayed by what I would call public sentiment in South Korea, which can be, how to put it, about as intellectually grounded as the Dubai Chontugi cookie craze. I mean, it's important to have a sort of barrier or mediating force between the public and the decision makers for there to be a process. And I'm not saying that Lee Jae-myung is taking his orders straight from the public, but at the same time, he's certainly building his image on the idea that, you say it, I'll do it. So we'll see what he does. We'll see how he uses the feedback he gets on social media, but I don't think he's going to stop using it anytime soon.
Right. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this edition. Colin, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Mariana over in Italy, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you very much, Sunny.
Right. That ends this edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching. We return same time tomorrow, that is Thursday, with more panel discussion.